Welcome to the Homeschool Together podcast. Where one working mom and a stay-at-home dad help you navigate the nuts and bolts of the growing and dynamic world of homeschooling.
With a focus on early learners, like me.
All the ins and outs of building and maintaining your homeschool life.
Homeschool.
Find out tips and tricks to make things like this easier.
I'm reading.
And ultimately, enjoy educating your kids. And what's that last thing?
Have fun together. Did I do good, Daddy?
Yeah, you did, sweetie. Good job. Hello and welcome to Homeschool Together. We have a great Homeschooling Journeys interview today with Kristin Drenzek. But before we begin, make sure you head down in the show notes. All that great stuff is linked down there. Kristin's Instagram, but also a lot of the show notes, our resource guide, links to our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe at our YouTube channel and all the other ways to get a hold of us on Instagram and Facebook. But back to Kristin.
Yes, of Alaska Wildlings Instagram fame.
Yes,
we will link it in the show notes. If you want to just get a flavor, you can go ahead and click on that now, and you can see some of these gorgeous pictures.
Well, she's located in South Central Alaska, just north of Anchorage, I believe.
They're a blossom and root family. She has 3 kiddos, and so she talks about how she manages homeschooling all 3. Her children are young, ages 3.5 to 7.
She's not really a homeschooler. She's an Alaska schooler.
Yeah, I mean she's homeschooling, but she's also, they live so much of their lives outdoors and leverage nature in so much of their learning, which I thought was really great. It's a reminder to us
to get out of the house.
Get out of the house, and that it doesn't all have to be something prescribed in a curriculum. Mm-hmm. I mean, we love, as a Blossom and Root family ourselves, we like to, okay, this week I got to check off these things. And it was refreshing to listen to her say, if it's snowing outside, we're not homeschooling today. We're going to be outside the whole day, and we're going to be learning other things. And that's just as valuable as what may have been planned in the curriculum. I think it's always good to get those kind of reminders.
Yeah. Sometimes, I talk to you about it all the time, where it does feel like I'm worried that I'm going to forget something, or I'm worried that I'm not going to get
You're
to
going to be
something.
quote unquote behind. Behind who, right?
Yeah. As much as we've talked about people not thinking that way, we fall into that same trap.
Sure. I think it's very natural to feel that.
Yeah. It's like, I just want to get everything done. I only have, with our oldest, she's going to the preschool 2 days a week. I really only have about 3 days worth of homeschooling time, but we also have the weekends, and we go all year round. And so,
right.
We're not really missing out on that much, but I do have that kind of pressure. And it is nice to talk to somebody who says, we are doing the homeschooling, but it is so important for my kids to get outside and to experience nature, and to, be with their mom outside doing amazing things.
Well, and
that is
exploring.
That's just as enriching as, anything else in the world, and experiencing the world
right.
around you, and getting that connection is just as enriching. It's helping to wire up. Her kids' brains are getting wired up in a really amazing way. Mm-hmm. And while they're also doing homeschooling. And so,
yeah, I mean, the curriculum, while it has some things, she talked quite a bit about the Blossom and Root space science section of Kinder, which is awesome. But other parts of the curriculum, they've planned fun things to make it exciting for mm-hmm. you. But living in an area like that, even living where we are, anywhere, taking your kids outside and seeing what they're interested in, and then running with that, it's like, you could just do that, right? Yeah. That's where the unschooling, that kind of that tug of unschooling kind of always gets you, like, then that child, the interest-driven learning, right? Where you're following child-led.
Child-led,
this is the word I'm looking for. So I just thought that was great. How she said, we go on this walk, and we go on the same walk, every week for the last 6 years. We've gone on this walk, and the number of things they've observed about the changing of the seasons and things.
That was really cool. Yeah,
that was really cool. We also have a walk that we go on very frequently from our home, and we've noticed the same thing about how our children notice how things have changed, and because they're so familiar with an area, it's still a great opportunity to learn. I thought it was just a great interview. It was a pleasure to talk with her, and just a reminder that, 1, we have to get outside more. 2, we have to get some better outdoor gear.
Yeah, gear. I think that was the big thing. She really stresses the gear, and you'll see that on her Instagram feed. They're wearing good gear. And I think that just makes being outside in the environment more appealing, not only for the parent, as she said, the parents, but also the kids. You know, if the kids are wet and miserable, they're not going to enjoy it.
Right, right. I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, her motto, what she says in the interview, is that every day can be an adventure, and that's absolutely what she shows on her Instagram, which is why I originally thought she would be great to talk to, and she really was, and something that we can take. I think that's a great motto that we can take. You know, how can we make every day some sort of adventure, even in small ways, even though we don't live in a place like Alaska.
Yeah, but unless you live in the middle of, you know, the city or something like that, there's probably a hike or a lake or a park that you can
but
go
even
walk
in the
around.
middle of the city, that's a cause for adventure. The people watching. I mean, well, not right now, but usually the museums that you have access to, and the varied cultures, right?
Yeah.
I mean, going to all these different stores or restaurants or things, in non-COVID times, obviously, the things that you could experience just being in the city, the parks there. I mean, I think there's an adventure to be had everywhere. And it's just something that we should remember.
Yeah, no,
It struck me when she said that. I was like,
you're right.
That's right. Childhood itself should be an adventure, and we can help every day to do something, interesting and magical for our kids. And
yeah, whether it's your 1.5-year-old crazy, riding her Strider down the the driveway with her legs up in the air, or if it's going on a walk around a frozen lake in Alaska, you just get outside, do something. Don't stress about the curriculum. You'll always have time to do it.
Yeah, it's always there for you, right?
Yeah.
But something that piques their interest. You never know where it's going to come from. Our youngest is so excited about the drains on our street. She's just
the water at the bottom of them, and that she can throw things down them.
Right. Yeah, that there's, bits of leaves and things. And she's so excited about these storm drains. And so and it got our older daughter asking me how the grates were made. So we've been talking, because I'm in engineering, we've been talking a lot about how everything is made. She'll hold up a toy. Mommy, how's this made? Is this injected molded plastic? Yes, that is. Right. So she's asking about how it's made, right? How the grate's made, because her sister's interested in the fact that there's water and that the leaves fall. And then we're talking about, well, where does the water from this storm drain go? And we have a retention pond here in our neighborhood, and all those things, right? So I just walked by this drain. I don't know how many times. I never even noticed it, to tell you the truth. But they wanted to know so much about it. So I think that, there's always opportunity for interest and exploration. And I thought that was great. And Kristin reminded me of that, which I appreciated. So hopefully she'll inspire and remind you too of some of the adventures that you can have. So let's get into it. Hi, Kristin. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're so happy to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about your family and your homeschooling background and the awesome location that you live in?
How much CGI do you use in your Instagram photos?
None. I use none. Yeah, we are so fortunate to live in South Central Alaska, and it is just beautiful. When people ask me about the pictures I've taken, I'm really not doing anything fancy. I'm taking them with an iPhone, and it is just beautiful here. So we are very lucky to live where we live. So yeah, I am fortunate enough to get to spend my days homeschooling my 3 children, mostly outdoors in the beautiful state we live in. And my children are almost 7 in 2 weeks, my oldest, and 5 and 3.5. And we are a little bit new to homeschooling. My homeschooling history is maybe a little bit unique, as I actually never planned on being a homeschooler. My husband had actually been trying to convince me to homeschool my kids from the time I got pregnant. And I always laughed it off and said, no way, I'm not doing that. And I actually agonized over the decision for quite some time, and just thought about how hard it would be, never getting a break. And I feel like my head was telling me all sorts of reasons why I shouldn't or I couldn't, but my heart was just absolutely aching at the thought of not doing it. And I just felt in my core so strongly that I just had to homeschool them. And so we decided to do it, and it's been amazing. I can't imagine our life any other way now.
Did you choose the homeschool for some philosophical decision, or is it really just like the availability of schools, or was there some external factor, or was it you guys just have like a a deep-seated need to homeschool?
It was actually the outside time. It was when I realized how drastically our outdoor life would change when the oldest went to school. And so the time outside, and especially in Alaska, we have limited daylight in fall, winter, and I just realized, wow, like we're used to spending so much time outside, learning outside. If he's gone at school all those hours, that's really going to reduce the amount of time that we're outside together. And that's kind of what started it for us. That was my deal breaker for brick and mortar schools, was outside time. And it's now become so much more than that. And it's so funny. It's only been a couple years, but I can't even imagine not homeschooling. It's so perfect for us how it's working out right now. So
have you guys been in Alaska, since your first child was born?
we've been up here, I think 12 or 13 years.
Okay.
So my oldest is just about to turn 7. So yeah, we've been up here quite a while before, had a lot of time to explore before kids.
So in your homeschooling, do you guys do a certain type of curriculum, or do you guys do a lot of outdoor kind of like unschooling method in the woods and just kind of learning on the fly?
We're not unschoolers exactly, but we're definitely not scheduled homeschoolers either.
Okay.
Our schedule is very flexible, and we are always going to prioritize any sort of seasonal events and observations we're making around us and whatever interests the kids have over anything, any curriculum we're using. And we do have curriculum. We use Blossom and Root is our main curriculum when we use it. And when we use it, we love it. But we certainly are not the type of family that will have a schedule and sit down and do a couple hours a day. If it's snowing outside, we're going to be outside all day. We're probably not going to open that Blossom and Root, but that doesn't mean we're not learning all sorts of other things. So
do you feel that homeschooling kind of for you guys, because you do incorporate the kind of outdoors as much as possible, do you guys kind of had the mindset of being an all year round homeschooling family?
Yeah, I do. Sometimes I feel like, oh gosh, we've just taken, a month and we haven't opened any of we actually have a lot more curriculum too. I kind of buy curriculum anytime I see something I like. I get it and I print it, and we'll use maybe just a couple pieces, but
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, no, Ariel doesn't.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a very rare position to have as a homeschooler. We're not collectors of curriculum. Right. So yeah, we do. We'll school a lot during the summer too, and I feel like we've always kind of done this. We've only been homeschooling officially for, I guess, this is our second official year since my son's in first grade. But I do feel like I'm not new to what we do. I'm new to being an official homeschooler, but we've been doing the same kind of learning outside for his whole 7 years. I don't believe that learning all of a sudden starts when you turn 5. It's kind of more of we're learning about the stuff around us, and we kind of learn based on the kids' questions too. So, their questions are going to get more complex as they grow, and we're kind of reaching a point where some of the questions I'm like, oh gosh, I have no idea. Like, let's find out together type of stuff. Which, I'm not getting that from my 3.5-year-old yet. I can still answer all of her questions, but the 7-year-old, I'm like, that's a really good question. Let's figure it out.
I'm not as familiar with the homeschooling laws in the state of Alaska. What are your requirements like every year to meet your state homeschooling needs?
We have a ton of flexibility here. It's really amazing. It was definitely not something we ever, when we moved to Alaska, even thought of. My husband maybe had in the back of his mind that he wanted to homeschool his children, but he never told me that until I was pregnant. And I certainly would not have considered that, but I think Alaska is one of the best states for having flexibility. And I know right now, my son's only in first, and I think it might change in second. I feel like the requirements for what we need to submit might get a little bit more official of things that we have to put in. But right now we just give a few work samples, and they can really be anything. And our advisors, we do homeschool through a program, and we have an advisor with them, and they just check in with us, I think about quarterly. And we just have a Zoom call and we tell them what we're doing, and everything we're doing has always been totally fine. There's no strict requirements. There's no testing or anything right now. I think there will be in the future, but I think if we wanted to opt out of that, we could. We probably will just do it because I think we kind of organically cover everything we need to cover anyway.
Is this advisor, is this a member of the school district? Is this a public official, or is this something else tangential to that?
It's through, I'm not exactly sure the terminology. We go through it's a homeschool charter, I think, what we go through. The homeschool charter is called Twinley Bridge, and there's a bunch of different charters up here that you can sign up for. That's not the right word.
Is this like an online charter?
They have this, actually, they have a school. You can take classes through them. Not right now. I think their classes were canceled, but typically they do offer classes. It's not something we've ever done just because we kind of like what we do on our own. But they do have some classes. They have advisors. They have actually a school you can go to, but it's, the first graders would only go on Mondays or something, and they'd have like some different offerings for classes that they would do just on that day of the week. And then maybe second and third grade would be on Tuesday, that kind of thing. So it's definitely a reduced schedule. So it's something that homeschoolers would be more comfortable with. And, obviously if you're going to send your kids 5 days, you might as well just send them to school.
So now working with that charter, are they giving you like curriculum support and advice, or?
We get an allotment of money that we can spend on anything secular.
Nice.
And there are, I think, some requirements on how you can spend that, but it's pretty open on any books or equipment that you need, which is very nice to have.
When you guys are doing the Blossom and Root curriculum, I know there's some books that are necessary for that. Do you, use your public library, or do you typically, how do you guys fulfill that?
We live in about 10, 15 minutes away from our local library, and our library is great. We don't really utilize the library as much. We did for story times when my children were babies, but since then, I'm a bit of a book hoarder, so
I also don't know anything about that.
Yeah,
as we stare at a wall of 1,000 books. Yes, yeah. We don't know anything about that. No. We
are in need of a couple more bookshelves too. I've been scouring Craigslist and Marketplace for them because
we're going to be building them in January. That's what we're doing. We're building bookcases because we
should probably build them because we've got kind of weird spaces, and so often we need just exactly the right size to fit this area. And there's stacks of books on the floor right now, so we do need somewhere to put them. But I buy the books from Blossom and Root and other places. We buy old library books often, is how we get a lot of our books, and we get those from Amazon or eBay, and they're $3 or $4 a piece for a nice long book, and good way to get books. And it's also kind of cool that some of them still have the library tags and bindings and little cards in them. And so we have stuff from libraries all over the country, but we don't actually go to the library that often.
Are you doing the Blossom and Root curriculum for both your 7-year-old and your 5-year-old?
We're just finishing up kindergarten, which I've been doing for both of them.
Okay.
And we did nothing last year as far as formal curriculum for my now almost 7-year-old. And we didn't start reading or anything with him. He wasn't ready. And another big reason I wanted to homeschool was just so we could read at his pace. It wouldn't have to be something that he was forced to do when he was 5, because he wasn't interested in it and I wasn't going to push it. So we didn't do anything then. And so we're just finishing up kindergarten now, and it's going great with him. We've really zoomed through it. I think we just started at the end of summer with the kindergarten with him. Actually, my 3-year-old's kind of doing it too. I'll give her some printouts of it and she'll scribble on some pages. But my 5-year-old she's starting to read too. And my 7-year-old or almost 7-year-old is reading very well now, and she's just starting, but she's definitely just at a different level than he is. All kids have a different speed that they're learning. So they kind of like doing most of the things together. Their reading is a little bit different, the two of them, but the other stuff, all the science and the nature study, we do all that together as a family.
So what does like a day look like? So maybe tell us like 2 different days. Maybe start with a day where you're actually doing the homeschooling at home with the Blossom and Root curriculum. What does that look like, say, for, you wake up, what does that look like for the 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old? How do you go through that process of doing that?
Most of the time we do the curriculum together, even if it's just something that's really for the 5 and 7-year-olds or just for the 7-year-olds. But there are times where we'll try and get stuff done during my 3.5-year-old's nap time, and she does still nap, which is fantastic because it gives us about 2 hours of time in the middle of the day in case there's something that needs a little bit more concentration, or sometimes there will be activities that she would get bored for or interrupt for, stuff like my son reading. That's stuff that we do when she's either napping or going to bed early. So any like the phonics, that type of stuff, I do try to do that with just him when the youngest isn't around, just so that we can really kind of concentrate on that with him. But for most of the other stuff, any of the science, any of the language arts, any of our other curriculums that kind of have us doing crafty things or something like that, we'll either in the morning or in the afternoon, we don't have any set schedule. It's just whenever we feel like doing it, whenever everybody feels like they're maybe in a mood to open up our books, and we'll just sit down together and we'll do something. And the thing I like about Blossom and Root is there's a lot of things that you can draw in it. So our nature study, we've also printed out some supplemental materials that have coloring books, and especially for the nature study, it's really helpful. We'll read a book and then the kids can draw the animals. So the 3.5-year-old, I'll print her out a bunch of animal pictures. Say we're talking about bats. I'll print her a bunch of pictures of bats, and she'll just go to town on that for a long time while we're talking about other things. And this is an area where I like printing at home, and I have a lot of printing supplies. And I've also bought a coil binder. So now the kids have me coil bind them like coloring books on a regular basis. And sometimes they'll have just like 4 pages and they're like, "Mom, bind these." And I'm like, "Come on, guys, at least 10 pages. Give me some more to bind." But setting her up with these little, customized coloring books really does help us get more done. And she can make requests of, "Here's animals I want in my coloring book for today." And I'll print them out for her and bind them. And then, I can rebind something else later. But having her set up with something to color really does help us get more stuff done. But she's pretty involved in it too. She's old enough that she likes to learn about the animals or the planets, the space study that we're doing.
What is the space study? Is it like a unit study that you purchased, or is it something?
Yeah, this is a Blossom and Root also, and we've had a blast with it. We're almost done with that one. We're out in the Kuiper Belt right now, but
Cool.
we built a spaceship out of cardboard. That was going great. You're supposed to keep it for the whole year, which I think a lot of people have been having some struggles with, because especially if you build it big and you don't have a big space. We had it in our garage and they'd play in it every time that we did our solar system study. But then I needed the garage because it's about to be winter. So we moved it outside, but then it's also about to be winter. I put a tent up over it. And anyway, we ended up burning it. we had a mock space accident, and then we were rescued by some aliens that were going by. So we sold it into a story thing. But they did love playing in this spaceship while we studied where we were going. But the curriculum is really fun because it involves every planet that you visit. There's not a ton in the actual curriculum. You're kind of going out to see this alien, and you're doing things for her. So you're answering some math questions, you're counting up some fuel stuff, you're drawing a picture of your planets. So we did most of that, just in addition to what's written in the curriculum. But we just kind of spread out books. And this is part of why I like having all our own books versus library books. We just have a ton of solar system books and the Smithsonian DC books and Insiders, all those. So having 3 kids, I always think it's important to not, we're studying Saturn, here's our solar system book, everybody gather around this one book. Like that, it doesn't really work for us. So I have like 7 solar system books, and I'll just spread them around the living room and be like, "All right, here's Saturn on all these different pages. Just walk around, see what you like. We'll, read kind of all of them." And then there's no fighting because everybody has their choice of book. So we kind of study that way of just having books spread out and talking about it and then drawing the planets. And
that's kind of like what you do, the homeschooling in the house. Tell us about the days where you throw blossom and root into the corner and you get outside? What do those look like? Do you do a lot of preparation, or do you just say, hey, let's go for a walk, or let's go hiking in this area?
Yeah, not a ton of preparation for where we go or what we do, just besides being weather dependent. And if it's pouring, then we're splashing in puddles. Like that's what we're doing. So we do, and we love when it's pouring. Kids love splashing in rain puddles. So I don't ever wake up when it's raining and be like, oh man, this is a bummer of a day, because it's going to be a great day. There's going to be so many laughs and it's going to be great. So yeah, we do stuff depending on the weather, but yeah, we'll often just, where have we not been in a while, or where are we really liking right now? And we'll go somewhere, we'll go on a hike, and then homeschooling just comes into play. If we spot a bunch of mushrooms on a hike one day, we're going to check them out. And the next day we're going to go back with local mushroom guides and our journals, and we'll do a mini mushroom unit that we weren't planning on doing because that's what we found. Or we do a lot of seasonal stuff. We'll do hikes on the solstice and the equinoxes and talk about the sun. We'll do stuff on full moons. We do a lot of things by the seasons, a lot of things where we'll visit the same place. There's one hike that we do in particular that we've been doing for 6 years, every week, at least once a week. And so we just walk around this lake, and it's a really, really great hike, and it's only like a mile and a half. So it's easy to bail if something happens on the trail. But just walking around this lake in all the seasons and all the weather, noting the water level and where the ice is and what's in bloom, what's mating there, what's, just all sorts of things we've experienced in that lake. We explored it with kayaks this past summer, and there's a small hot spring at one part of this lake, and we kayaked over there, and there were dragonflies mating in concentrations that I've never seen. Like, it was so dense right there, right above where the hot spring comes out. And we just kind of kayaked around through that and then talked about that. And it's okay if I don't know, is it coincidence? Is it because it's the warmer water here? What's going on? Is there something underneath? And that's kind of just how we explore the world. And it's just kind of cool to take places like that we just make observations every week for years and years, and just kind of get to know a place like that.
It was raining here, so we're in Western Washington. It rains, pretty much every day in the winter. It's very hard to get my girls out of the house sometimes. Yeah. How did you kind of cultivate that outdoor lifestyle? Are you guys, big campers? Are you guys big outdoor naturalists?
They snow camp. You see the IG?
I did see them snow camping.
that is legit.
Maybe you could just, how do you do that?
I think I honestly I think there's two really important things to that. And I think the first thing is parental enthusiasm. And I feel like even if you're not feeling it, you can fake that. But honestly, I'm almost always feeling that, because I'm just very enthusiastic for being outside. And my oldest always has been too. Ever since, like, even when he was a baby, we called him Adventure Baby. And he from birth, he was an amazing camper. And I remember thinking, like, oh, this is because of me. This is because I'm doing everything right. I'm camping with him as a baby. He's just an awesome camper. And it's because I started him young. And yeah, maybe a little bit of that. But then I had my second child and my third, and I camped with them from birth, and they were not as great intense. And I didn't do anything different, but they didn't love it as much naturally. But we still kept doing it, and now they both love it. But it was just that time. I think it's like maybe 6 to 12 months, or maybe it's like 9 to 15 months, I think, is the time frame where, in my mind, I don't really like to have a baby in a tent or on an airplane or, really anywhere. Like, they're trying to walk, but they sort of can't yet, and they want to be on the move everywhere, and they just don't want to be contained anywhere. But anyway, we camped with them through those times, all the kids that were great and the kids that weren't. And still, it was always just a time when we're very enthusiastic about it. My husband's not a huge camper. He does come with us a lot of the times when we camp as a family, but I take the kids out a lot by myself too. And it's just always, I don't feel like I have any bad camping memories. And I have had trips that have not gone well at all. I had one last summer that it was like everything that could go wrong really was going wrong. But I still just think of it, I feel like your worst day camping is better than your best day doing anything else, kind of. So I enjoy it that much. And I think that really helps with kids when they see their parent being so enthusiastic about something and so comfortable somewhere, and they want to be a part of that too. So I do think that helps. I think it helps in the rain, it helps in the snow. And then the second part of that is, of course, having really good gear. And I really do love gear. I worked at REI, in what feels like a past life, but I've always really loved having an assortment of gear, being able to choose stuff for exactly the right weather. This doesn't mean it always has to be the most expensive stuff, but for our climate, it really does help to have a variety of stuff and really good stuff and stuff that is actually waterproof. Because I do feel like sometimes if you think kids don't like being in the rain, it's not really that kids don't like being in the rain, it's that kids don't like being wet and cold. And especially up here, if it rains, it's cold. And I'm sure raining in the Pacific Northwest in the winter, it's also cold. So I feel like that's a hard thing, and it can be hard to find the right stuff. I feel like when I was looking when my 7-year-old was just born, there was one rain mitten on the market, and it wasn't a great one either, and it was very hard to find. And now there's a lot of options, and I don't know if I just didn't know about them then or if it's just becoming more of a thing, but I feel like it is definitely more widely available stuff to help keep kids out for more than 20 minutes. Some of the gear we've had in the past, I'm like, okay, you're completely soaked through in 20 minutes. Is that the expectation for American children that just, well, aren't they done? And I would say, no, they're not done.
Have you faced any, unique challenges based on your location that you've had to overcome? I mean, camping solo with 3 children is
In the snow.
in the snow is probably a bridge too far.
Well,
for
in the snow is
99%
in
of
my
parents.
yard, so that's
Still.
Still.
that's easy. I feel like there are no challenges to yard camping almost. Like we just brought all our stuff in there, and if somebody doesn't want to be out there, then they just go inside, which didn't happen, but if it had, it would have been easy. We did have a trip this last weekend. I've only backpacked with all 3 children once, and it did not go great. But when I look back at pictures, I'm still like, wow, it looks pretty great. Which I did take a couple of videos of that time and saying on the video how my kids were not having a good time, just so I kind of remember that, not to, remember that it was a hard trip, but just to remember that even when it is a really hard trip, they are still saying, I'm having a blast. And especially my 2 daughters, they had a really hard time on that trip. And I remember then I took a video of us at night and I said, how is camping? And they were like, it's awesome, it's the best, or whatever. And my son is like, what are you talking about? You girls have been complaining all day. And they're like, what? No, it's awesome. And so that's how they're taking it away too. They're not pretending they're having a good time. They really are. They just, they have their kid struggles too.
Cool. So maybe we'll pivot a little bit. What type of, groups or co-ops, what type of opportunities do you have? Or, maybe not now with COVID, but maybe before COVID, what did you have, or what do you do to help get your kids with other kids? And do you do activities, enrichments, things of that nature? What are some of those things that you do other than, going hiking and camping and with mom, but do they get activities with other kids?
Yeah, some of our first friends that we met were through Hike It Baby, which
love Hike It Baby.
Yeah, Hike It Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of it.
Yeah, great friends
Yeah,
there.
it is. And I shouldn't say that I help run a branch because there's nothing happening in the branch right now, but we do have a branch where I live, and I think it's been 5 years. Yeah, I think the branch that I'm currently running is as old as my middle daughter. And that's actually where we started doing these hikes around a place called Reflections Lake that we did every week. And it was just a recurring hike that I did. And it was great. We had people join us. So we did that, I guess it stopped in March But until then, we did it for 5 years. And I think there were 2 times that we didn't have company, that we were the
Wow.
only people there. Every
Wow.
other week, we had families join us. And the 2 times that there was no one there, it was below -20 both of those times. So not entirely surprising. And we were only out for about an hour those times. Although I will say they were some of the most beautiful hikes, because it's really, really beautiful when it's that cold.
Yeah.
But I was not surprised we weren't joined. But every other week we'd have families join. There were some families that were regulars that we kind of knew were coming every week, but then there would be some totally different people that would come hike with us. So I feel like, especially my kids growing up with that, we need it a little bit less now. We kind of have established friends and play dates and that sort of thing, but it was definitely a really useful organization for us. We moved here and we had friends, but then we started to have kids, and you want to make friends with other people who are having kids and who are into the same kind of thing and into hiking. And so it was a really great thing for that, and for my kids just growing up with meeting new people on the trail. And I just feel like there's a lot of growth that they got to do just on hikes, meeting new people and developing friendships.
It's also nice to meet other people who value going to bed at 9:00 at night as well.
Yeah. That's the problem with people who don't have kids. It's like,
The kids, hey guys, let's play until 12:00. No, that baby's waking up in 5 hours. I can't do that.
See, so you have respect for tomorrow. I haven't quite developed respect for tomorrow yet. Still regularly up till after midnight for really no reason. But I'm not partying or anything. I'm not out with people.
Do you have a secular community of homeschoolers there in your area? Have you been able to reach into kind of like a network of people?
Yeah, well, we found a bunch of people from both my son goes to an outdoor environmental program that's for like kids kindergarten and above. It's a field school that's run through one of the local colleges, and that's kind of a great community that we've been introduced to. And we were introduced to that through the Waldorf forest preschool that my son and now my daughter goes to, and we've met a lot of people through those and kind of formed a community through those things.
So we've talked a little bit about forest preschools. Maybe could you talk a little bit about like your experience with the Waldorf one?
Sure. It's a Lifeways program, and it's just wonderful. My son went for 1 year, and my daughter's now going for 2 because she's a September baby, so she gets a bonus year before she starts kindergarten. And it's great. They're outside most of the time, but they do inside stuff too, and they'll do some cooking. My daughter's really developed a love for wet felting and felting wool of any kind, which is great that she does there. I try and be good with crafts, but it's really my weakness. And sometimes she'll say, "Mom, can we felt today?" And I just kind of inside go, "Oh, like do I have to?" And I love that she likes to do it, but it's just not something that I'm as knowledgeable about. And I'll get stuff out, I'll look at instructions, we'll do stuff together, but it's the outdoor stuff that really comes more naturally to me. And I know how important crafting is for them, and especially her, because she's really kind of art driven, but I don't do it as much as I can. So I'm really happy to send her somewhere that they do instill that love of arts and crafts and handicrafts and that kind of thing for her.
You spend a lot of time outdoors. Do you do a lot of screen time, television, movies with the kids, or is it really just primarily outdoors? And if so, do they have an interest in, screens or televisions, computers, things of that nature?
We don't really do screen time.
Okay.
We'll do it. We don't do it at all during the summer. Almost under any circumstances, we won't do it. But we'll watch if there's a launch. We'll try and watch that. Almost never when it's happening, because I forget and it doesn't work out. So we'll rewatch and pretend it's live. But we'll watch some things like that. For our space unit, we did watch a couple of the NOVA documentaries on the planets, because I realized the books are really great, but there's just some things that a video would be a little bit better for. But I do try and have screen time be so minimal that it's not even something they really think to ask for. and it works out great. They don't really ask for it. We had introduced a little bit of screen time to my oldest when he was maybe like 4.5. I think I had tried to do, they say no screen time or no screens before 3 or something like that. And I had always had that in my mind. And then all of a sudden he was like 4, and I was like, well, maybe we'll try a little screen time with you. And it did not work for us. And it just kind of really threw him for a loop, kind of regulation wise. And I think he's much more sensitive to it than other kids would be, but I just felt like it would take days for kind of the effects to wear off that he had from it. And I don't feel like there was as much benefit to us, just versus it's also a thing of not having time for it. I just feel like there's not time in a day to sit down and do stuff. And I am lucky that I don't really cook a lot of the meals. My husband does that. And so I wake up and, oh, look, breakfast is there. And then we're eating. And for dinner, if I think that's a time when a lot of parents will, have half an hour screen time so they can get stuff done, which is totally understandable. But, I don't do a lot of the dinner prep, but I'll give the kids something to chop, whether it's going in the dinner or not. Just here, chop this carrot, and maybe we'll give it to the chickens, or who knows, but you can chop this for 20 minutes and that'll be great.
And the reason why I asked that question was because I have read some papers and studies that screen time can kind of affect your ability to do deep focus. And I wanted to know that, since you guys do a lot of outdoor times, do you find your children have that ability to go focus on something like very deeply and, kind of dive into it and kind of disappear into it, as opposed to? Okay.
I think so. And I do think I can see how screen time could kind of throw that out of balance a little bit. I mean, my older kids are old enough now that they're maybe not as affected by that as they would be as babies, but just, the flashing screens and just getting used to that real stimulus, that just constant, intense flashing screens. I do think that is not great and it should be avoided. I feel very strongly about this actually for very young kids, and definitely had no screen time before 3, but now I feel like it maybe it wouldn't be quite as detrimental to their focus as it would be when they're really young and just kind of developing those inputs and awareness. And I think especially for babies, like I've heard people say before, like, look, my baby looks like they're bored. I'm like, they're not. They're exploring your ceiling, which they will maybe do for a very long time. And it's very interesting for them, just playing with focus and that kind of thing. And I think that lasts a lot longer than people think. And you always feel like you need to prop baby up somewhere and entertain them somehow. And I think they're not given enough credit for how well they can entertain themselves. And I do feel like you see effects of that you may not realize later on. So we do try and avoid that. We do have an exception, is we do watch football. And previously that had been football without commercials, and now we haven't found a great way to avoid the commercials. But we try and mute them and have the kids turn away, but it doesn't always work. So sometimes they're repeating stuff. But it is a very active activity for my son, because through the entirety of his football game, he is throwing himself across the room, playing catch with himself, which he's actually very good at. So he kind of treats that as an active thing. And then the girls don't really care to watch it all. They're not really big fans of football, but I love football also. So that's something we kind of do together. So that's like our screen time exception. But I don't see the same effects from him that I would see if we watched something else, like if I put on a cartoon or something for him. And we did, when he turned 6, we watched The Lion King, and it was kind of a monumental thing for us. It's my favorite movie, and that was kind of a big deal. But then kind of the whole week after we watched that, he was a little, I don't know, he was different. And I don't think it's just my perception. I think it was just, it was really great that we watched it. I'm glad we did, but it was just, I don't know, a little bit different. And I think it affects their play too. He still, that was that was last December, so that was a year ago. And it's amazing. He's only seen it once, and it's amazing what his memory of it is, because I think we have the same memory of it, and I've seen it, 100 times. And, he incorporates it a lot into his play, which is great, but it's also great when he just incorporates things that aren't, directly what he heard or saw from a movie. So
I noticed in your Instagram feed, I was thumbing through that you seem to have a lot of like tumbling and physical exercise and things of that nature in your house. Could you talk a little
Yes.
bit about that?
Yeah,
That looks
we
awesome,
do.
by the way.
Basically, you have every pad on the planet, and I'm very jealous, especially the one that looks like you guys are sliding downstairs. Could you talk about your future
Yeah.
what is it, luge athletes?
That the stairs one, that's a new one for us. They're sliding down on nugget couches, which I
Yes.
hesitate to even mention because they're impossible to get right now.
And
But
you have so many of them.
Yeah, I
We
saw.
do.
I think you have a couple of the. They are impossible to find.
We were trying to debate if you robbed a warehouse full of nuggets.
No, they used to be so easy to get, and they used to give you package discounts for buying more than one. So we've had them for a very long time. We have 5 of them, and they will cover our whole living room floor and make just like a whole padded crash room, kind of, which is great for when my son watches football. He can throw himself around the room and just like dive and just have these cushions everywhere. And then, you can put them down the stairs, which a lot of people put them down the stairs. And I had wanted to do it forever, but we have a boot rack at the bottom of our stairs that has like foot-long pegs that stick out. And so I was worried about them sliding down into those. And then I think my son actually came up with the idea. He's like, we can put the pickler triangle down at the bottom and then put a nugget over that. And because that's a triangle, it's not like it won't slide against the boot rack. And I was like, wow, okay, yes, we can do that. That'll work. And it did work. And so they slid down the stairs, and that was, they did that for, I think, 2 solid days, like almost nothing but that. I think we took like outside breaks for a couple hours, and we'd come right back in, and that is all they did, was find ways to slide down those stairs. And I think we don't have a hill in our yard, and that's one of my greatest property regrets. And I've thought about ways to build them and how much soil would I need to have dumped on the yard just to have like a rolling and sledding hill. We haven't done that yet. But even if you don't have stairs, the nuggets are still really great for building forts, or just for throwing yourself around, for, when you do the thing where dad is whatever, some sort of beast on all 4s, and the kids are riding on his back and he's trying to throw them off, and, just any sort of tackling or kid wrestling, throwing activities. We've got a ninja line up there too, and so they can swing and kind of do flips on those. My middle child she always invents just the most amazing gymnastic moves, and then my son's like, whoa, I need to know how to do that, and he'll kind of copy her moves. But she's great at doing flips on that. And so just a lot of stuff like that we can actually get better exercise a lot of the times indoors than out, just because we have these mats that they can fall on, whereas our yard is gravel and cobbles, and it's just kind of not nice to fall on. So we try and remain as active as possible indoors. And we have a Swedish ladder too, which is nice for climbing. The cats actually like to climb it too, which I don't know how they do it, but they do. And just climbing, swinging. Hammocks are great. I feel like I'm constantly on the lookout for like, what kinds of things can I, if I see my kids wanting to do something, like I feel like if you see your kids hanging from a door frame, they need more things to climb. But also door frames are great to climb. I know people that say, no, don't do that. Don't climb that. I don't know. We're not a don't house. We're a like, do it. If you're not going to break the house, do it.
Well, I installed my door frame, so I don't want to.
Our door frames, actually, our molding falls out very regularly. So,
active play, physical play, is that very purposeful in your homeschooling world? Do you really push the kids into doing that? Do you do also any gymnastics or organized gymnastics as well?
We had done some open gym stuff with when I just had 2 kids, we would go to open gym a lot. And then I had the third, and I just found it was hard to manage 3 kids in there, or just a baby and 2 kids. And, I was like, I have to pay for each kid to go here. And I was like, maybe I should just try and turn my living room into a place where we can just do whatever we want all the time. And obviously it's not the same, but I wouldn't do organized sports with the kids until probably at least 8 or 9, I think, just for other philosophical reasons. But open gym was nice, but I just kind of realized and I'm kind of a homebody too. I would always rather just create something in my house rather than go to a gym or a library or something like that. I love the ideas of having those places, but I find that I'm most comfortable in my home or, out for hikes. And not that we don't like people. I love seeing people outside or on play dates, but sometimes I just do feel a little like, I don't know, I don't feel like going out or doing something or paying for a gymnastics activity, having to monitor the kids, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that whenever we came back from open gym, someone would be sick too. Like there were a couple of places like that we went to that I'm just like, well, we're going to be getting a cold this week. And so.
Do you plan on doing, or have you done a lot of foraging, especially wild mushrooms, wild edibles? Do you do that as part of your homeschooling environment?
Mushrooms, I would love to, but I'm very uncomfortable with it.
Sure.
We did some mushroom study last year, and even the things that I was very confident, yes, this is this, it looks exactly like this picture in our guide, it's growing in the right place, I still didn't really want to touch it because I don't feel like I'm experienced enough. And
Okay.
just like my general scatterbrainedness with having children, I just don't really want to mess with it. So it's just we don't touch them. But we do, so we like to look at mushrooms, but we do spruce tips and dandelions and that sort of stuff. There's more easily identifiable plants that will make syrups every year, and we do very basic stuff. It's something I'd like to continue more working on myself and the children. But yeah, the spruce tips and dandelions are like our big foraging items. And we kind of get we make several things with both of those, I think. And I think we missed spruce tip season this year somehow. It just was like a very busy spring or something, and we didn't get to do it. And the kids still talk about how we missed it.
And what is spruce tips? I don't.
When a spruce tree kind of shoots out its first little growths in the spring, like they're this light green bud that comes off the top of the tree, or it comes out the end of each branch. They're little needles, but they're soft. They're not like super sprucey and pointy yet. And they're actually really nice to eat. They taste kind of lemony and sprucey. And I think they have beers and stuff brewed with spruce tips, but you can make honeys and you can make other stuff, or you can just eat them. And even it kind of varies which of my kids likes them from year to year, but even the ones that don't like them do try one every single day, even if it's just to make that like lemon face of, oh, I don't like this. So those are really fun to pick. And there's also a Devil's Club is another one that it does become poisonous, I think, but in the very, very early spring, it sends out a little like tender green shoot that you can eat.
Do you guys do any type of, fishing or hunting as part of your homeschooling as well?
We don't, and
Okay.
I would love to. I own an ice auger, and we've been ice fishing, but I do not fish, and I don't really enjoy fishing. I would love for someone else to deal with the fish if we caught one, and me just to drill a bunch of holes in the ice and look at the ice and watch it. But my son would love ice fishing, so that's kind of something I'm hoping. Of course, we're already quite a bit into our winter, but I did kind of promise myself this season that I would figure out how to get fish for him. And I think he would really enjoy doing that. We do have friends that ice fish, but of course, right now we haven't seen them in a while. So it's not going to be the winter that they teach us how to do it. So I do know it's something that we do have the equipment to do it, and we could do it ourselves. It's just a matter of me actually doing it.
That's okay. So let's talk a little bit about why you're here. Ariel stalked you on Instagram. So
This is
tell us about Instagram. Tell us about your Instagram handle, what you're trying to do with that. Maybe give us the whole rundown.
Sure. I am relatively new to Instagram. It's not something I'd had for very long, and I don't know what I'm really trying to do with it. I think just I try and do at least a post a day. Sometimes it's more than that, and I do take an excessive amount of photos, and I can't help it. I've tried before to go like a day without taking pictures, and I can't do it. But I just am trying to kind of share what our life is like every day. So, you know, every our kind of family motto is every day can be an adventure. And that's something that I kind of told to myself when we first got pregnant with my oldest, and kind of knew, okay, life's going to be changing a little bit. Our adventures are going to look different. I'm not going to be able to go into the backcountry for a week by myself anymore. Of course, now that's changing because now I can take my kids out with me. But, at the time, I just realized we're going to be slowing down. Our adventures are going to look different. They're going to be smaller, and that's okay. And it's actually turned out that it's better than okay. It's experiencing the world with them is so much richer than it was doing it by myself. And I feel like each of them are really enthusiastic about nature in different ways and different things that they love to do and different places that are special to them. And so it's just kind of trying to share parts of that. And people have said stuff to me like, I picture your kids, just happily singing themselves into their snowsuits every day and never any tears or anything. And, we certainly have tough days too. But I do find we almost never struggle like getting into the car or getting out the door. And I do think part of it is having like a gear routine. We don't have a homeschool routine, but we do have a gear routine of like what goes on and just being kind of upbeat while we're doing it, and just everyone kind of helping. And I do a lot of the putting on, mainly because it's just like, if I let you all put on all your stuff, I think that is better for you probably developmentally, but we will never make it anywhere.
So, we've taken up so much of your time today. We really appreciate it. But before we wrap up, just one question we like to ask people we interview. If you had advice for a brand new homeschooler, we have lots of new homeschoolers due to COVID. What would your advice be? What did you wish you knew and you'd love to tell others who are just getting into this?
I think it might be a little bit different if it's a COVID homeschooler, just because if they might have to go back into a traditional school. But I really think kids are very resilient, and I think just do what you can. I feel like a lot of people are juggling 10 million things right now, and I think just kids will be able to catch up. Kids aren't little kids, especially they're not falling behind. They're learning every day. They're learning, they learn stuff crawling around on the kitchen floor. They'll find something and learn about it, especially in my house. But just anything you do, they're learning, and don't stress about exactly what they're learning. Go with their interests. I just feel like cultivating that love of learning early on and often. Every time they're interested in something, just show enthusiasm about learning about it with them. And then they're going to love learning. I feel like the ages my kids are right now are such key years for kind of developing how they learn, how they question things, and how excited they are about life and about learning and about discovering things. And kids just have that. All kids have that innate ability to just wonder and question. And, it's always a thing with parents, just the, why, what's that? Well, all the questions that I think parents sometimes feel dragged down by it, but just kind of try and turn that around as often as you can into like this curiosity that's such a gift with children. So embrace that and go outside with them every day.
Yeah, I'm definitely inspired to get some better rain gear after
I think so.
hearing this. Our daughters love to get outside, and we just don't. I think part of it is we bought them good gear, but we need to buy ourselves better gear so that we're not
yes.
cold and wet, because
That's
it makes
not fair.
mom and dad not want to be outside.
Yes,
but
that's part of why I've bought my kids really, really nice rain gear is, working at REI for years, I have great gear. I have gear that I can be laying in a torrential downpour for hours and be dry. So, it's not fair for me to expect them to have subpar stuff. So I'm like, you're getting the good stuff, kids.
That's terrific. Well, thank you so much, Kristin, for your time today. I think this is great. And we're going to link your Instagram in the show notes so everyone can look at your gorgeous pictures and wish for the next Alaska vacation. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us today and making us a part of your homeschool journey. Please engage with us on social media. Join our Homeschool Together podcast group on Facebook and find us at Homeschool Together Podcast on Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, questions, and recommendations. Until next time,
Happy homeschooling!